This morning, Fulton County's elections chief is keeping his job for now. Commissioners are at a standstill over a decision on whether to fire him. They had to step in after the county's Registration and Elections Board voted to fire Richard Barron a couple of days ago. Liza Lucas joining us from the newsroom now with more on how this back and forth unfolded and what happens next.
Yes, the commissioners are basically at a deadlock right now whether to keep or remove Barron. The votes are split among party lines, and it was North Fulton Commissioner Bob Ellis, a Republican, who put forth the motion to fire Barron, along with the support of two other Republican commissioners.
They've emanated out of consent decree that the county is under, and they've talked about health and safety issues, chain of control, custody issues.
Now, Ellis right there is referring to a nonpartisan report released this week, which pointed out issues with how Fulton ran its elections last year. Meanwhile, Commissioner Khadija Abdur-Rahman is one of three Democrats in support of Barron.
Republicans from the state and county level are mad at him because he was not going to do voter suppression. He's not going to allow the Republican Party to take over Fulton County elections.
Now, Commissioner Ellis disputes that this move is political. He says that he just believes that the Board of Elections should be the ones that are ultimately making the call. But if you go to the Code of Ordinances for Fulton County, it makes clear that the Board of Commissioners has the authority, the power to appoint the election supervisor as recommended by the Board of Registrations and Elections. So 11 Alive actually reached out to Vice Chair Natalie Hall. She was the one who sat out of this vote, and that's what led to the deadlock. No response yet, but this issue is not going anywhere. It's expected to come up again at the Commissioners' March 3rd meeting.